Listening is such an important part of social media marketing. I'm Katie Lance, and I was interviewed recently by Leslie Appleton Young, who's the former chief economist for the California Association of Realtors. I was approached by Woman Up, which, if you're not familiar with Woman Up, is an amazing organization. Woman Up is part of the California Association of Realtors and is an amazing organization for women of all ages, all backgrounds, to really empower and encourage other women, especially in the real estate community. And so I was honored to be a part of it. I've spoken at their events in the past, and it was really an honor to be part of this conversation. Leslie and I had a fantastic conversation about the power of listening, the power of being intentional. And I thought it was such an important conversation that I wanted to make sure that we bring it here to our audience here as well. So take a listen, enjoy, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Make sure you leave me a comment below after the show. We'll see you soon.
I am so excited today because we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which, as you all know, is active listening. When Deborah told me the theme was your communication superpower, listening, I thought that's exactly what I want to talk about. And I want to talk about it with Katie Lance. Katie, I'm so thrilled that you are here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Leslie. I am so excited to be here, and it's a great topic. So I know we're going to have a lot of fun.
I always remember at one point when I was learning from you, you kind of said, look, you don't have to write a big thank you, just acknowledge, like always acknowledge. And I just thought, there's the rules of the road on the internet and on social media that we need to talk about. And that's why I'm happy you're here. So anyway, active listening. What does active listening mean? It means that you listen without ego, that you listen to really absorb where the person is coming from. You don't listen to wait to talk. You don't throw in your, grandmother's experience with the same situation. You don't do that. You really listen with a very open heart and don't hijack the conversation. And it's amazing. It takes practice, but once you kind of get into that mode, it's so liberating to be able to listen without trying to think of what your pithy or wisdom-filled response is. You get to just take that person in. So anyway, last week we saw this new rom-com with Julia Roberts and George Clooney. I don't know if anyone's seen it yet. It's called Ticket to Paradise, and as you can imagine, it's light as a feather. But at one point, Julia and George are playing characters that are divorced, and it's a very contentious divorce. They really don't like each other, and they don't communicate well. And at one point, when he started to talk over her, she said one of my favorites quotes, which was, "I'm sorry, did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours?" And I must tell you, I've used that a few times in the last few days here. So I thought it really sums it up pretty well. So we've talked a lot about being an active listener in a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation, but we haven't talked at all about what it means to listen on social media. And there was no one else, Katie. I was so thrilled when you said yes. And I hope everyone who's listening, listens to your blog, reads your posts. You're wonderful. But just in case, could you give us just a little bit of a background on how you got here and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, it's an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of the Woman Up community and just everything that you guys are doing and have created. My passion is in a lot of ways social media, but it's, I think, a lot more than just that. I see the struggles that agents and brokers go through all the time with trying to keep up with the latest and greatest and which platform should you be on and what to post and everything. And my passion is really helping agents and brokers figure out social media and what to post and how often and not even that part of it. It's really about putting together a smart strategy that is going to save them time, help them generate business. We just celebrated our 10th year in business, which is exciting and
incredible.
Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun.
Right.
And so, yeah, we specialize in helping agents and brokers figure out their social media. We started a online academy. It's called the Get Social Smart Academy, about 6 or 7 years ago, to really help agents and brokers wrap their arms around strategy. I'm a speaker. I know, you and I have crossed paths on many industry events, spoken at Woman Up, spoken at many events
And
across
I think
the.
it was an Inman conference where I first heard you on stage and was just completely blown away.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun, and it's really, I feel very blessed to be doing what I love each and every day. My husband Paul was able to quit his corporate job again about 6 or 7 years ago, and works with me full time in the business, and we've built a great virtual team, and just are, continuing to grow and serve and evolve and listen, as we're going to
Right,
talk about
right.
today. So it's a lot of fun.
I'm thinking you started this in 2012 and how much things have changed since then. And I was even revisiting your excellent book, and I hope anyone that hasn't read it will pick it up. Get Smart Social is just a how to, why to, let's do it book on getting an intentional strategy for social, and I can't recommend it more highly. So
Thank
anyway, I'm a Katie fangirl, and let's get let's get started. So in
you.
your book, and as I've said, it's a coherent, understandable strategy, not scattershot. And it came out 5 years ago, which seems like an eternity. And I think the only thing that's a little bit aged in it was kind of a reference to some of the platforms, Snapchat, for example, that evolved into something really different. But even with internet years going by in hyperspeed, it's it's all still there. One of the comments you made in the book that just really stuck with me was, think of it as a dinner party, not a one-way street. And I'd love for you to talk about what that means to you and what we ought to be taking from it.
Yeah, I wrote that 5 years ago, and I think it's even more important today. There's so much noise on social media. I don't have to tell you this. Any platform you go on, it's just a lot of noise and people trying to, get your attention, obviously. And I think, especially with social media, one of the challenges I think for agents is they're busy, right? Agents are some of the busiest people we know. And so
Right.
oftentimes the mistake is they end up hiring someone to do it for them, or they sign up for some sort of service that kind of posts for them. And, there's nothing wrong with having an assistant or having a team or having help, with some of the things that in terms of content. But because real estate is such a relationship business, it's absolutely important that you show up, and the agents and brokers that we work with in our academy that are getting a lot of business from social media, they're, getting 50, 60% of their business from social media.
Wow.
They're really doing a couple things really well. They're showing up, they're connecting, they're responding, they're listening, right? They're not just like being a drive-by liker, or they're jumping in, liking stuff, and then
I love
running,
that.
right?
Right.
And they're putting themselves out there. They're putting their not just generic content. There's kind of this sea of sameness, right, in real estate
Right.
marketing, but
Yes.
they're putting themselves out there. They're overcoming maybe a fear of getting on camera. They're putting their personality out there, and so yeah, I mean, as a quick example to the dinner party example, I always have said this for years. I'll say to agents, look, imagine having a dinner party with your 10 most important clients, and instead of you being there, you have your assistant there running the whole show. And we would never do that, but that's what happens when we just hand off our voice to somebody else. So it's super important to show up. And it's also super important, like you said, it's not a one-way street. You have to give, you have to be a listener. I always tell my boys, be a noticer in the world. Notice what's happening around you. And in social media, that's a huge opportunity to notice what's happening, to connect with people.
So what are kind of the benchmarks for acknowledging, for not being a drive-by liker? Because we talk a lot about having meaningful relationships with our, presenting our authentic selves, and it really can be exhausting, especially like an introvert like me. It's like I really care, and it takes me a long time and a lot of effort to do that. So
Yeah.
I can't do it times 100. So
Mhm.
do you have any tips for just trying to be reasonable about it, but still having an impact?
Yeah, something I've done for years, I wrote about it in the book, it's still relevant today, is this idea of focus five. So every day I take 5 or 10 minutes, open up my phone and I'll pick a platform, maybe it's Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, wherever you're spending time. and you take a few minutes to meaningfully connect with at least 5 people. So that doesn't mean you have to friend 5 new people a day. That would be a lot. But I scroll through my feed and I'm looking for 5 posts that stand out to me, right? So maybe it's somebody's going through a tough time. Maybe someone is talking about a charity they belong to. Someone just put up their Christmas decorations. Like, people post about all different the concert they went to, whatever it might be. And instead of just liking and moving on, I'll take a minute to like and comment. And in terms of commenting, I always recommend leaving a meaningful comment. So meaningful comment is a comment that's at least 4 words. So instead of saying great pick or congrats, you might
Or
say,
cool.
yeah, or cool. You might say, wow, Leslie, what a great picture. Where did you take that? Or, happy birthday, Deborah. Like, what do you have planned for the day? Just like in real life, you'd have a conversation, right? So you might
Right.
use their name, you might ask a question. And so that simple act, honestly, for years, at least a decade, probably longer than that, I've been doing Focus 5. I do it every morning as I'm drinking my coffee, usually before I open up email, because email is like a black hole that you may never get out of.
Right.
I open up Facebook or Instagram and I Focus 5. I just think about who are 5 people I can meaningfully connect with. And then I might post something. But if I post something, I always make sure I do my Focus 5 before that.
Now that you mention it, I do remember, do remember that from your book, and I'm glad you reminded me. And I just, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, 30 days in a month, 5 times 30 would be 150 more than 4-word, meaningful conversation
Yeah.
starters with someone. So at the end of the month, you actually have something to show for all of the energy draining that social is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those connections might be comments. Sometimes they are 5 private messages. I send 5 different people, like if you see it's someone's birthday, you could be one of the 50 people that writes on their page, happy birthday, HBD. Like everyone writes the same thing. Why not be the one of the only people that sends a private message? Maybe you send an audio message through Facebook Messenger, or you send a little video, just a quick, hey, I saw it was your birthday, thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. It doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, I feel like
No,
sadly the bar is kind of low in a
it
lot of
is.
ways,
It is.
so just you notice her, and like you said, when you multiply that over the course of time, and also from a strategic point of view, because the way social media is structured with algorithms, if you feel like the same people are always liking and commenting on your content, one of the ways to kind of break through that is for you to be proactive and to, go to people's pages. If you're like, gosh, I haven't seen so and so in a while, well, actively go to their page,
Right.
right? And, break the algorithm a little bit.
No, I think that's great. And I'm going to get back to this in a minute, but the examples that you gave were all asking a question, and I
Mm,
can't emphasize enough that one of the keys to being a good listener is digging down, is
yeah.
asking. And John and I joke all the time. It's like, well, how did you feel about that? Because these guys are like, we don't talk about feelings. It's like,
Right.
yes, we are. But to really engage and dig deeper instead of like, oh, well, here's my similar experience. It's like,
Exactly.
don't do that if you really want to engage. So the same year that your book came out, my other favorite book of 2017 was We Need to Talk by Celeste Headley. And we've talked about this book. I've talked about it a few times, and I just want to kind of remind everybody it's a great just a great primer on active listenings. And one of the things she talks about is the difference between communicating with someone and having a conversation with someone. And she has this quote by William White that says, the great enemy of communication, we find, is the illusion of it. We have talked enough, but we have not listened. And she
Mm,
included some statistics on, the percentage of people that you think you're friends with, maybe 10% think they're friends with you.
wow.
Like those numbers aren't right, but it was big enough
Yeah.
that I was like, wow, we think we're connecting more than we are. So what I wanted to just get your thoughts on is, what does it mean to listen on social media? And we've talked a little bit about it, but any
Yeah.
other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I said it a second ago, but I think it's important to say it again. And it's this idea of just being a noticer, and taking time. Like I think that there's I think it's really important that with social media, especially in real estate, a lot of conversation gets talked about content, where you should be and how often, and should you spend money on ads? And all of those are good questions. But even more important is the listening part of it, is taking time to go through your feed to see, because here's the thing, what people post about, whatever it is something that's meaningful to them, right? When you post something, there's a whole psychology around it, right? It's either, it's something funny, you want to maybe seem more insightful, you want to see more interesting, right? If you think about the last maybe 5 or 10 things that you've posted, like we all have a reason why we post or why we don't
Right.
post certain things. And so I think actively, like I said, being a noticer and listening, and also when you post, going back to those comments and having a conversation, um, as much as possible with the conversation that's happening in the comments. It's really easy to post something and get a few comments and then you just like those and you move on. But someone took time to comment on what you had to say, so comment back to them. It's just, it's really
It's a
tiny
dinner
thing.
party,
It's
right?
a dinner party. I mean, and I would just, anybody who's listening to this, I mean, one of the easiest ways to sort of prove my point, if you will, is I would encourage anyone to go back to the last post they did on social media. Maybe it was this morning, maybe it was 2 days ago or last week. And if there's a few comments, go back and comment back to each one of those people. Maybe it's just an emoji. Maybe it's, hey, thank you so much for chiming in, or I really appreciate you commenting. 9 times out of 10, what's going to end up happening, because you commented back to those people, first of all, they oftentimes will jump back into the conversation, right? But because of how the algorithms work, now your post is getting seen by more people. And often more people will start to see what you just posted. That's why when we go on Facebook, we see posts from not just today, but 3 or 4 days ago, because there's still a conversation happening in the comments.
Right.
So I think, again, from a strategic point, I think it makes sense. Business wise, it makes sense. Um, but again, it's being intentional. It's getting it as simple as getting it on your calendar. I have
Right.
on my, something I've done for years, 10 or 15 minutes a day. Put it on as your listening time or your focus
Right.
5 time, or whatever you want to call it. But pay attention to what people are
Right. I mean, there's a
posting.
ripple effect that goes
Yeah.
on, even if you're not in the conversation, that the
Yeah.
conversation is going on. And to that point, would you please, my favorite story of all time, could you please, you know what I'm going to ask you, could you talk about that United Airlines flight that you took and what happened? Just start the book off with that. And I think it's just, it's on so many levels, it's fabulous.
That is a good, I haven't told that story in a while. It's an oldie but goodie, but
It really
yeah.
is.
So if you haven't heard the story, those of you watching, basically what happened is I was on an American Airlines flight and I was probably like 15 or 20 minutes into the flight. It just gotten kind of settled. And I started to hear like this awful noise, like the noise you never want to hear on an airplane. And pretty quickly the pilot was like, we're having a little bit of challenges. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but he's like, we're going to turn around and go back to SFO, which is where I took off from. And so, okay, fine. So we landed, that part was fine. They tried to get me on another flight and it was very frustrating. I was at the airport for hours and hours and hours and ended up not being able to go where I was going. Tweeted about it, was very frustrated, never heard a response from United, but I did hear a response from Virgin Airlines, who basically said, we're so sorry you had this experience. The next time you fly, we would love the opportunity to serve you on that. And it was just such a reminder of, like, again, listening of the conversation. It wasn't like I tagged Virgin in that conversation, but they were listening, they were noticing, they were problem solving,
Right.
from that
Right.
30,000 foot view, no pun intended. And I think that's a great example, but like back to your point of listening, it's not always like someone asking a question, it's seeing something that's out there and going, is there an opportunity to help and to be in that conversation, and to listen. So yeah, and
Yeah.
it was a pretty cool experience.
An opportunity to be proactive, and
Yeah.
my guess is there's a few postings on these platforms with disappointed clients of other agents that might be an opportunity to reach out. Maybe just one or two, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it might just be an opportunity to say, I'm so sorry you had that experience. If I can help answer any questions for you, let me know.
right,
Right. Which is very different than like, hey, call me today. I'm a realtor. I'm number one in my market. Like, I think
right.
when you come from a place of just being helpful, same thing. I mean, another good example is like if agents are part of Facebook groups, there's a ton of Facebook groups out there, but just being a point of someone who can answer questions and be helpful, or maybe connect people and say, hey, you know what? I've got somebody I can connect you with. You should meet so and so, and just trying to make those connections.
Yeah,
It's having a long-term approach to all of this, right?
right.
Which I think is important.
It's an investment and it
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
and it's an authentic way of being, who doesn't want to be a helpful person?
Yeah.
Kind of make
And
someone's virgin made your day, right?
exactly. And I have since told that story, I mean, hundreds of times. It's in the book.
Yeah,
So when we have these experiences, positive or negative, typically that's one of the things we do. We share about it. We share it on social media. We share it with our friends. And so it's usually the mediocre things that we don't share about, right?
right,
When you look
right.
at Yelp or you look at any review site, it's either people who are like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, or that was the worst experience of my
Not
life.
so much, right?
Exactly. So, if we can hopefully be in the camp of like blowing people away by being helpful, there's that concept of like servant leadership of just, not being a doormat, but just serving and thinking of your audience first and knowing that, hey, things come back to you. I have people who reach out to me who are like, I've been following you for years and now they want to work with me, or sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes people just need to kind of percolate, getting to know who you are and to build that trust, and just takes a little bit of time.
Be patient.
Yeah, be
Be
patient.
patient and you taught me this, be consistent. Whatever it
Yes.
is, just be consistent.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the things I want to talk to you is about the social part of social media. And I think I'm not the only one that's been challenged by this. Like, especially before I retired, like here's my professional person and here's my kids and my family life and a vacation and this and that.
Yeah.
And how do you and maybe there's not one answer to this. It's kind of who you are. And I delight in your family postings. I do. I feel so connected. Um, I don't know if everybody, you have to kind of find your space, but is
Yeah.
there shine a light on that because it's just a conundrum for me.
Well, I think it's a conundrum for a lot of people. And it's something I think I even still struggle with. Sometimes I'm thinking, do I share too much? I think you always kind of, sometimes we feel like we're a little bit of an island, like, as far as what we're doing. But for me personally, I think, with real estate's a personal business, right? And we are in an industry where we typically connect with people, and typically we do business with people we know, like, and trust, right? We've all heard that. I always like to say we do business with people we know, like, and trust and relate to. I think that
Right.
relatability is really
Right.
important.
It's huge. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we mix up like personal versus private. I heard another speaker talk about this recently, and she was saying, look, I don't, just because I'm sharing a couple things that are personal or funny, like something funny with my cat or something silly with my kids or something about holiday decorations, doesn't mean I'm sharing every private thought, every private moment,
There is a filter.
there absolutely is a filter. And I also think it depends on the platform. I was just on a podcast recently talking about this. And this is, I think, one of the reasons to have different platforms. Not that you have to be everywhere. I don't think agents have to be on 27 different platforms. But for example, a Facebook business page, I think, can be all about business, right? And
Right.
there's some people that you do business with, you may not want to be friends with them. It's okay. Like, I don't want to be friends with my doctor, and it's all good. I love my doctor, but I would follow what they talk about professionally, right? And so that's a place for that. I always say, hey, if you want to follow me professionally, follow me there, right? Same thing with YouTube. YouTube is, I would say, 95% professional, probably 100% professional, right? LinkedIn, same thing.
Right.
Parts of Facebook tend to be a little bit both. Instagram is definitely kind of 50-50, where it's business and family and a little bit of both. So that's where I think every platform is a little bit different. I don't know if there's necessarily a magic formula. Um, I would say, though, that you can incorporate who you are personally into your content without having to spill the beans on everything and how you feel
Right.
personally. I think this is where, putting out your original content, putting out video content, getting yourself on camera where you're sharing some examples of funny story, things that have happened to you as you are sharing something helpful is a way to talk about business, but also incorporate who you are personally. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, here's my follow-up question. And let's think of an agent and think of who they're talking to,
Mhm.
right? And they're talking to potential consumers. I
Yeah,
mean, not consumers who are potential clients.
right.
So is there a right or wrong there? And what is your also follow up? Is
Mhm.
there a place for the family group and the friend group and the
Mhm.
everyone else group? Do you do that? Or I think I once heard you say it's just me. I'm out
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
talk to me about that.
I mean, I think on one hand, of course, look, we don't want to offend people. We don't want to be polarizing. But at the same time, like we are who we are, right? And I think it's okay to have an opinion. I think it's okay to say, I believe in this. This is important to me. And the reality is if you do put your opinions out there, if you do put things that are important to you personally, do you run the risk of alienating someone, offending someone? Of course, right? That can happen in a number of different ways. But the other flip side also happens, right? Because there's some people who will see what you're posting, see what your content is, see what you're all about, and they'll say like, "Oh my gosh, I love what she has to say. I
Yeah.
love, what they're doing." And for other people, it might be like, "No, they're not my cup of tea." So, you know, I think I always say lean into who you are and who you're not. I
Uh-huh.
honestly think our business has thrived because there was a moment in time where I was like, you know what? I am not going to be all things to all people. And I just had to be okay with that. Like I think it's like being comfortable in your own skin. Like it's all good. And I think part of that, like you said, is I am who I am. Like I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a CEO, I'm a speaker, I whatever. Like I have all these different hats. And so I am who I am. you know, I don't have like a separate, like private little page just for, I don't know who I am personally. When I share stuff, I share stuff. Now, again, I don't necessarily share everything, and it may not be on every single platform because every platform is different. But
Right.
um, I don't know. I just think that you are who you are, and again, just kind of be comfortable in your own skin, and it's okay to share things. I mean, I feel like we're at a point where we don't want to start offending people, obviously, but it's like,
Overthinking it.
it
Right.
is exactly. And if you're unsure about something, then don't post it, or if you're like, gosh, I
Right.
really feel passionate about this, but I don't know. Well, push pause and wait 24 hours and see if you feel the same way. If it's that important to you to share, whatever it might be. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, here's like a little sidebar. If you could explain this algorithm 101, like I know on my Facebook I have almost 5,000 people that I'm connected to somehow and maybe 1,200 followers. And what does that mean? Like if I post something, it kind of seems like the same 50 people, whatever it is,
Yeah.
see it, which is great. But these numbers confuse me and I don't really understand how it works. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the only one on this call that needs just a little bit of a little tutorial on this.
Yeah. So, and I think you're talking specifically about Facebook, right? With
Yes.
friends and followers and everything. So, I mean, basically, the way Facebook works is when you post something, on your personal profile, as you're talking about, when you post something, a small percentage of your followers and a small percentage of your friends see your content. And the more people interact with it in the first few minutes and really the first few hours, the more that post gets seen by more and more people. So this is why if you post something and you don't get a whole lot of likes, it usually never gets a whole lot of traction, right?
Right.
But if you post
Right.
something and within a few minutes a bunch of people comment and like it, and then you comment back and there's this whole conversation, like that post could live for a few days, right? People are commenting and
Okay.
interacting.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. So it kind
Yeah.
of goes on and then kind of gets renewed life. And then
Yeah.
a week later, someone sees it. It's like, wow, I thought it'd been up there the whole time. Well, no, they just saw it, right?
Right. And one of the ways to get more people to see your content is it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. it's being intentional, it's actively liking, commenting, and interacting on other people's posts. So this is why I kind of said it in passing a minute ago. If you feel like you're seeing the same people over and over again, which I think happens to all of us, there's a couple things that you can do. So you can actively go to your friends list, which Facebook doesn't always make this easy. It's like you got to go to your page, you got to find your friends, and you could, and go to your friends list and maybe pick 5 people a day. Go alphabetical if you want. This could take a while if you have 5,000 friends, right? But go through and see, gosh, who's still active, who is still posting. Do I know them? Do I still want to be friends with them? Right.
Right.
And it's definitely a small thing that can make a big difference. The other thing you could do on Facebook, and not everybody has this feature, unfortunately, it's one of these features that's rolled out to some people, but it hasn't rolled out to everybody. Some people on your phone, on the Facebook app, there's a feature that Facebook is I guess rolling out, where instead of just sort of seeing the regular algorithm, you can actually sort your feed in order of what people have posted, which is what it used to be, right? Remember, like
Right.
10 years
Right.
ago,
Right. Right.
Facebook used
Right.
to be in
Right. Right.
chronological order. So there's a feature that's rolling out. I have it and some other people have it. And it's actually pretty fascinating when you get that feature on your phone to see the chronological posting, because all of a sudden you're like, who are these people?
Right.
Right?
Right.
What is like, and it's a great way to kind of clean up your feed and reconnect with people who maybe you haven't seen in a while. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying the way Facebook makes it work,
Yeah.
but
Thank you for that.
yes,
Now, going
absolutely.
back a little bit to this issue of how we listen on social media,
Hmm.
um, I guess my question is there like a rule of thumb? And I think in the chat last week, you and I were kind of going back and forth because I said kind of like 80% commenting, supporting, being there for other people, 20% posting, because I'm an economist and Pareto's law seems to show up
Yep,
everywhere.
yep.
As the expert here, is there a kind of a reasonable rule of thumb for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 80-20 rule is perfect.
Okay,
For,
I knew you would.
I mean, I'm going to agree with you. Why would I disagree with you, Leslie? I mean, really. But yeah, I mean, I think yeah, definitely 80-20. Take the time. I mean, I'll just give you a quick tangible example of something I do. I think just about every day is before I post, I always take again 10 or 15 minutes and I'm scrolling through my feed. I'm doing my focus 5. I'm intentionally connecting with people. I also make sure to go through all my notifications. I go through all my DMs, and then I will post something. And then honestly, after I post, and I don't post every single day, but after I post, I'll take another 5 minutes, scroll back through my feed, and maybe leave a few more comments. So yeah, it can't just be this post and run, or
No,
like bump,
no,
you
that's
know,
irritating.
it's super irritating.
Okay.
And it's just obvious when it happens. And we've all been guilty of it, like, oh, I got to get this up or whatever. But a lot of times that happens because you haven't thought ahead, right? You didn't plan ahead. And that's where I think having a strategy comes into play, where you think, okay, every day I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes to connect with people and listen. Once a week, I'm going to take an hour or so to think ahead, like what's coming up? What do I need to schedule? What do I need to, create? And then also once or twice a month, like sitting down and creating some of that content. So like just getting a system together,
Yeah,
is important. So,
yeah, great. Thank you for that.
yeah. But yes, 80-20 to
80
answer your
20 all the
question.
way,
That's
baby.
the short answer. Exactly. 80-20.
So one other topic I want to get your thoughts on was this the persuasion paradox, which I stumbled upon. And the gist of the persuasion paradox is you don't ever convince anybody of anything by arguing, and
Mhm.
actually the way that you have some opportunity is by listening and asking questions. And it reminded me of our dear friend Kathy Charit, who, gave her TED talk on being a better asker, right?
Mhm.
And when I've heard that in the past, it's really been about kind of a little bit about delegation and a little bit about I want to learn and that. But in this context, I think it's really about connecting with people, showing them you care, digging in and building trust. So I just wondered what your take is on that, and any thoughts you have on what we can all do better to have more meaningful, effective conversations.
Yeah, well, I think it's back to what you said a little bit earlier ago about, when you're having conversations with people, I think sometimes the default is we say, "Oh, I know what you're going through. 10 years ago, I did this, this, and this, or my mom did this, or whatever." And we sort of, instead of just listening and asking, how can we support you? Or maybe we ask a question as sort of a follow-up question. Instead, we jump in with like some sort of way we want to relate to that person, which I get it. I think a lot of us
I
do
do
that. I
too. It's
know.
not a terrible thing.
No,
It just turns the focus back to you instead of to
right.
the speaker.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think again, trying to just be meaningful with how we listen and the questions we ask. And I also think, I mean, to your point, as far as persuasion, I'm always, just to kind of bring it back to content, I always say, like, look at your life as content. And I really try to be aware of questions that people ask, topics that come up that are related to my expertise. And I'm always, I mean, honestly, Leslie, I always have a notebook and I'm always like jotting things down and thinking, like, how can I put out things that are helpful, by listening, by not just assuming like, oh, this is what people want to hear, but just kind of taking note, of
Can I
what
just say
are
you
pain
held
points.
up a real paper notebook, right?
Yes, I
So
did a nice
I
spiral
expected
bound.
you to say I put
Yes.
it in the reminders in my phone or notes or something.
No.
And I mean, that's just one more reason to love Katie Lance because I am huge on the notebooks and the ink pen.
Yep.
I I can do anything if I can take beautiful notes. You know?
I agree.
Beautiful.
And I mean, and that's actually a great segue to just one other thing I'll mention. And I am a big believer of taking the online offline, whether it's you see something that happened with somebody, and if you're close enough to them, you might pick up the phone if you have that relationship where you can call them and reach out. It might be just, again, a private message, especially if people are going through a hard time. I mean, people on social media, at least personally, tend to post their high highs and their low lows, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this amazing thing happened. I won this award. My husband got a job promotion. We're moving to Europe, right? Or, oh my gosh, this awful thing happened. And so what happens is that you'll get hundreds of comments, but if you could be one of the couple people that reaches out privately and sends a Facebook message, or maybe a little video or an audio message, say, hey, Leslie, I saw your post. I'm just thinking about you. You're in my prayers. It could just be something as simple as that, right? Just like being a noticer, sending a card. I love doing that. I try to do that as, at least intentionally a couple times a month where, I'll be at Target or wherever. And I'm like, oh, somebody just had a baby or somebody just did this. I'm going to get them a card and just try to take that online offline. I just think that's important.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to segue now, and thank you for all of your insights. I just
Oh, thank
appreciate them,
you.
and I know the audience has as well. And now we're going to get to know you a little bit deeper
Woohoo.
with my rapid fire questions. Okay,
I
with
did read them ahead of time so I could
I
get a little
know,
prepped.
I know. With some of them from the Actors Studio, which I always enjoyed when Lipton did those interviews, and some of my own. But your favorite word and your least favorite word, Katie.
I had to think about this one. I think my favorite word is love. That might be cheesy, but that's probably my favorite word. I think you have to do everything with love in your life. My least favorite word, my kids will probably laugh because I know I hate this word, is the word moist. Just do not
You know,
like
I
that
think
word.
that's like if we were doing a survey, that's like number one.
I hate that
Nobody
word.
likes that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, what turns you on and what turns you off?
I love work ethic. Like someone who is in integrity, they're going to show up, they're going to work hard, they do what they say they're going to do. That is huge. And I feel like, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of people who do not do, unfortunately, what they say they're going to do, or they don't respond to your emails,
Right.
they don't respond to your messages. Like, I just think work ethic is a huge thing. What was the second part?
What turns you off in
Oh,
addition to moist?
oh, in addition, exactly. Honestly, ego. I think that's yeah, it's sometimes challenging to talk about
Yes.
that, but just people a lot of times have big egos, and I think it's fine to have self-confidence. I don't think that, that's not about that. I think it's just thinking you're better than other people. Like I see this a lot with people sort of in the social media world who get really big. They have this huge following and they're like too important to check their DMs, or they're too important to check their own email or whatever. It's like, look, you're
Yeah.
too big for your britches, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So ego, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit
But
of humility.
all right, next question. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I would preface this by saying if I could sing, which I don't think I can, in a fantasy world, I would love to be on Broadway.
Oh,
That would
wow.
be amazing. And if I didn't have kids and a family and all that,
All the other stuff going
all
on,
the other
right?
stuff, yeah, that would be my dream.
What is one memory that will stand out for you during this COVID experience, which I know 10 and 20 years from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, what we lived through. But what right now stands out for you as a special memory, good or
You
bad?
know, yeah, I mean, obviously there's some things professionally that stood out. I'm very grateful that we were a business that had always done a ton of training virtually. We were totally set up for it in a lot of ways. And so I'm very, very grateful that, we had that ability and we were able to serve and just help a lot of brokerages and associations and franchises, and people were stressed out. Nobody knew what was happening. And I'm
Right.
so professionally, that will always be a special moment where we were just able to kind of come in and help and be a resource, kind of guide people. I talking about social media in uncertain times, which there was no roadmap for what we were
No,
going through. And I think personally, what really stands out to me is just the amount of time I got with my family. I mean, at times it was crazy, like all living together and zooming school and everything. And, it certainly wasn't easy at times, but I just remember, especially on days that were challenging, just thinking like this might be the most time I get with my kids, even more so than when they were little. And so just trying to make the most of it. We had a lot of fun, like backyard fun. We bought one of those huge, like inflatable pools on Amazon. Like that was our little summer vacation, was in our backyard, and doing haircuts for the kids, which were I have a great respect for hairdressers now.
there's a line that we will not cross in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, exactly. But I'm
Right.
just very grateful for that time, those memories. Yeah,
That's beautiful. I think we all worked harder, but also slowed down. We
yeah,
were running our bodies all over the country, which was a big change.
yeah.
Um, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, beginning of your career, what would it be?
Probably don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, a lot of it is small stuff. I think I'm the kind of person where I'm a little, oh, I don't want to say controlling, but it's like, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and um, just, yeah, not sweating the small stuff, letting go of stuff, probably hiring sooner, not trying to do it all. And feeling like, oh, I'm the only one who can do X, Y, and Z. Like, that's ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I really grew into over the years was figuring out like what's my zone of genius, like what do I do, and then where are there opportunities to bring on people who are smarter than me, quite frankly, who can do things better. So a lot of lessons learned,
Yeah.
especially
And
after a decade.
that's a win-win, right? When you
Yeah,
can really bring people up and still get to do like define your own career, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah,
is great.
yeah.
What's your biggest regret?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, on one hand, I know this is such a cliche. I always like to say I don't have regrets. I mean, I do really feel like things happen for a reason. I think that we learn from our mistakes. I'm the kind of person, like, you could tell me 20 different times, don't do this, but until like I do it and realize, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that, then I don't learn the lesson.
I
So,
think that's the human condition, to be honest with you.
right. I think so too. It's like, oh, what do you mean this is hot? I could touch it. Nope, nope. Yes, I don't know if I necessarily have any regrets. I mean, I guess if I did have any regrets, it would just I look earlier on in my career like not standing up for myself, being a little bit of a people pleaser too much, and I think that's something I've really tried to work on as I've gotten older, and just like again, knowing that look, you're not going to make everybody happy. It's okay to say no to this person or no to this opportunity or no to, like just
Right.
you don't have to make everybody happy. So,
No, no. And
yeah.
just because they ask doesn't mean the answer has to be yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
And I'm always curious. I'm a morning person, so I'm always curious how people start their day. So, do you have a morning routine that you do consistently that sets you up for a successful day, or are you like the alarm goes off? Well, I know you have the boys, so you
Right.
can't sleep in. But how does your morning look?
Well, I'm laughing because if my husband were here, he would be like, "Oh my gosh, you should see Katie in the morning." Like, I'm not a morning person. I always thought, oh, like once I have kids, that'll change. Like, no, it's. I mean, yes, I do have to get up early, but I'm more of a night owl, which is a little bit of a struggle because I could stay up. I love staying up late. I love it being quiet and everyone's asleep. I just pay for it the next morning when I have to get up early. So I would say for me, because I feel like I'm not really a morning person, I give myself grace. I don't start calls super early in the morning. I mean, generally my first call is not till 9 or 10. Doesn't mean I'm not working, but it's just having a little bit of boundaries of how I work best. I always start with a couple of strong cups of coffee.
Of course.
If you follow my Instagram story, that's always my morning story is me sharing like what cup of coffee I'm drinking because I have like this crazy mug collection of way too many coffee mugs. Um, but yeah, just kind of slow, I guess, sort of easing into the day, and having some boundaries as far as start time. The morning time with the kids, I think, is important. It's
Right.
always a little frenzied. They've gotten older, so it's a little bit easier. But just giving that time, to them. I also really try to not look at my phone until I have talked to my family first.
Nice.
Some days I'm more successful at that than others, but I just find that trying to make that really intentional effort of like, no, I'm not going to look at my phone until I,
Right.
you know, go give my kids a hug and kiss good morning. It's just little things I think help to set yourself off, in the right direction. And the last thing I'll just say real quick too about my morning is just having kind of an intention of like, what am I going to accomplish this day before
Right.
I open up email, right? Because I think email sometimes becomes our to-do list, and all at the end of the day, all we've done is just answer 50 emails versus like,
Right.
look, I want to get these one or two things like absolutely no matter what done today, you know. So
I think the word intentional just shows up all the time in these discussions, just
yeah.
be very intentional about your time. Now, I do, as a morning person, I did notice that you said at night it's quiet and you can think. And I did want to let you know that if you get up at like 5, you got a couple hours of the same thing. So
I know. And there have been mornings where I've done that and I couldn't sleep or whatever. But
no, I think we're
yeah.
just our biorhythms or whatever it is are just very, very different. So I always kind of admired night owls because it just seems so much more grown up than me. It's like, is it 9 o'clock yet? Because I'm waking up at 4. So okay. Anyway, so
Um,
thank you on the morning routine. I would be interested in a person in your life that's had a meaningful impact um, on you.
I think, especially in the context of Woman Up, I've heard lots of conversations around mentors and having people that can bounce ideas off of and things like that. I think probably one person that's had a huge impact on me. I think she knows it. I don't know if she does, but is Tracy Weir, who I used to work with at Inman, and now she runs her own amazing company. But we worked together 10 years ago. She was my boss at the time, and she's probably one of the smartest marketing people that I know.
Wow. Yeah.
And really, took me under her wing at a really, I think, important time. I think she really saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. Um, when I was at Inman, that's when I really started to be more on stage and be more of a public facing type person, which kind of led into what I'm doing now. Um, yeah, she just kind of took me under her wing and gave me a little bit of tough love too. Helped me get some media training, like just some
Right.
sort of foundational things that. And she's awesome. Whenever I run into her at events, I try to connect. But
That's wonderful. I love that. That's great. Um, so my last two questions are, I think, very personal. And the first one is, what do you wish for your children's future?
well, hopefully I don't get emotional now. I mean, I don't know if this is an original answer or not. I want them to be happy. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. I think for any parent, you want them to be happy, whatever they choose in life, whether it's with a partner or not with a partner, or in college or in work or in life. Um, I think you give your kids hopefully your wisdom and knowledge, and at some point they've got to sprout their wings and fly. And so I think happiness is a big part of it, and hopefully also just being able to make an impact on others around them and the next generation. you know
Right, right.
and like I said earlier, I always tell my kids, like, be a noticer, like what's happening in the world. And it's not just you and your life and this and that, and all of us kind of get tunnel vision into what we're doing. But if we can just take a step back and go, gosh, I could help out here, or I could be a helping hand over here, or whatever it may be. So that's my wish for my
I'm
boys.
thinking of Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers,
Ah,
right? And that's beautiful.
yeah.
So if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Ah, another good question. As I was reading this, I was like, this is a James Lipton question.
James Lipton, I miss him. I miss
I
the
know.
program, but it
Me
lives on in
too.
all of us copying his questions.
I know. I used to watch his show all the time. Um, I mean, again, probably cliche, but hopefully at the pearly gates, God says, well done, well done. Um, he might say, you did it.
Did it.
I think we all, spirituality is such a personal conversation, but I know for me, I always struggle with, like, making sure that I'm hopefully living my life in a way that is a good example, hopefully a great example to my family, to those around me. Leaving a legacy, I think, is really important, and yeah, so hopefully I get a little pat on the back and maybe a high five and a hug.
I hope so too. And I'm pretty sure you will.
I hope so.
Oh my God, Katie, this has been just wonderful. I
Thank you.
appreciate I appreciate all that you have done in your career to make it make sense and give us the tools for not getting lost, but staying really focused on what this is about. And I've always felt like every piece of advice you give eventually becomes and is heart centered,
Yeah,
which is, I think, the authenticity um, that you emote, that reflects off of you. So
thank you.
I'm just a huge fan. It's just been delightful to spend the afternoon with you, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. From all of us at Women Up, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. I know we could probably talk for a whole another hour at least about all of this stuff. And
Easy, easy.
it's just really an honor to be here. And thank you for the conversation and the opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, happy holidays, everyone, and we'll see you again in 2023.